Well, hello and good evening. Welcome, everyone. In the name of transparency, I was inspired to give tonight's talk, but we're taking a little break from multicast right now, mostly because this was my on-call week. So I've gotten more calls than usual. So I'm running a little behind on producing material for this. So I already have this one done. I want to make sure that we're here every week providing content, useful content for you folks. So thought tonight would be a good night to do this. And we got a subtitle here. It says probably what your customers care about most. And let's talk some truth here. You ever stop at a chain restaurant, drive in somewhere in the middle of nowhere? For those of you who remember the days before Yelp in particular, this is so true. Caro's, Denny's, all these kind of big chains. You didn't stop there because they were the greatest thing you ever ate at. It was because like that place in Barstow, California that says Asian restaurant, Japanese, Korean, Chinese, and there's one person sitting in there, you're like, well, maybe I'm just going to kind of skip on that. But this Caro's, I know I'm going to get. I know that it's going to meet a certain standard. So that reliability, even if it's reliably mediocre or reliably okay or however you want to describe it, and sorry, guys, I'm not saying the product's bad. It's just, it's not a 5-star Michelin rated experience you're going to get there, but you're going to get a consistent experience, a good, consistent experience. And that's probably why you stopped. So this applies to IT just as well as anything else. That's why we're going to talk about it. And I'm going to talk about the personal side of it a lot more than I have for the last couple of weeks talking about multicast. So just our typical disclaimers here. Specific brands and models are for illustration purpose only. They do not imply any endorsement by any vendor in any way. This does not represent the business process of any employer or client, although it's been influenced obviously by my career, past or present. And this is based on my own work and study. I only include equipment that I have experience with, and at the time of writing, I'm not receiving any compensation or inducement from any vendor. Just want to be clear, I'm doing this because I want to do it. I'm not saying that sometime I won't start getting sponsorship of some sort. Be happy to, but if at any point I'm getting any kind of sponsorship, I can be really clear who that is, so that you're aware that has a potential influence on what I'm presenting. I think that's just fair. Definition. So it's interesting. The quality of being trustworthy or of performing consistently well is one definition of reliability. Now, the second one is what I'm talking about, the degree to which the result of a measurement, calculation, or specification can be depended on to be accurate. So when I talk about quality, I remember when I did my Phil Crosby Quality College a long time ago, he talked about making a part like a washer, 1 inch plus or minus like 3/1000ths of an inch. That's clear. That's reliable. If I can deliver that part to those specs, that's reliable. Now I can take another spec that's say 1 inch plus or minus like 2/10ths of an inch. Well, that's got a lot of variability to it. But if that's actually my specification, if that's okay for the application I'm doing it, that's perfectly fine. That's reliable. If the product I'm delivered meets those specs, it's still reliable. So something to really keep in mind as we go through this, that reliability doesn't necessarily always have to meet that first definition of consistently well. And another example I want to throw at you is some of you may be familiar with the work of writer, director, actor Edward Wood, famous from the 50s for his masterpieces like Plan 9 from Outer Space and Bride of the Atom, that some say he's so reliably bad that he's actually good. Other people would describe that reliability as grounds for a lawsuit if you forced him into a room to watch Ed Wood movies for like 8 hours for the mental damage and therapy they required to recover from that experience. He's still reliable. He's just reliably bad. And the purpose for this talk really is to engage your organization, I got to make sure that I can include that, in you, in a soul searching. Are we reliably good? Are we reliably bad? Are we just plain unreliable? And we're going to talk about that for a little bit. Triple constraints, because you're going to listen to these hours of talks of mine. You're going to walk away with that for sure, right? Time, scope, budget. You move one, you're going to impact at least one, if not both the others. Except when it comes to quality. Quality can actually can shrink all those in really positive ways. But it's going to require some inner work, some real change work, which is what we're going to kind of talk about today. So, how might we define reliability in an IT organization? Things like uptime, service level agreements, customer service, which we might be able to find out about through surveys, maybe after ticket surveys, regular internal polling, particularly for an internal organization, which IT really is, and tracking systems. So which go into SLAs, customer service as well. Are we closing our tickets? Are we doing it in a timely fashion? Do we have stuff that's been sitting out for months and months and months, untouched, unloved? Are we reliable? And there's a lot to be said on this. And some of those things, one of the things I think you need to be really clear is, and IT people hate this. Most I know hate the idea of we are a cost center. We cost an organization money. Now you're like, hang on there, David. Hang on. We save money through our automation, through having a good, robust system of technology. And I'm going to say absolutely true. And I want to point you back. First job out of college in the car rental business. Prior to automation, you own a car and it, say here in San Francisco, as part of your rental fleet, ends up in Sacramento. That's a different franchise or a different business unit. They have your car and they're going to rent it until they can have a chance to rent it back to you. They're going to rent it a couple times, earn a little money. So in all those paper contracts you used to get, there was a copy that it went to the whatever business unit owned that car, because they kept a file, and there was a clerk that was keeping track of all the mileage. That's why they want to know your check-in, check-out mileage, because one of the things we want to do, if Sacramento, say, was trying to make money off me, so rather than give me a cut on the rental of my car, if they were renting it but not sending me any paperwork on it, and there's no contract, hey, there was no money, so they make money off my car, run mileage on it, reduce its resale value, and I don't get a dime for it. So there were clerks that sat there and tallied up miles, and then they'd send off these requests to wherever those missing miles were to say, where's the paperwork on this? Where are those miles? Or they'd bill them for those miles. And modern system, they don't need to do that, right? It's all tracked online. There's all kinds of reports. There may still be processes where a human intervention is needed, but it's a lot less people. So it's true, IT does save the organization money, but it takes money, and that comes out of the bottom line. So out of profit. Assuming you have one, and you hope you do, because that's going to keep the doors open. So I want you to really keep that in mind. Yeah, you're a cost center. So there's some things, you think about venture capitalists, right? Those guys have a lot of dogs. They have one big one, a YouTube, a Google, or whatever. They make a killing. Everybody thinks they're a genius, and they forget all about all those dogs. That's because they actually brought money into people. They were able to write a check to their investors of, look at all that money you made out of my fund. IT, we can't do that. We may be able to show metrics about where we're saving money, but they're still looking at, you guys cost us a lot of money. So this reliability is going to come into a lot of this. So let's talk about some of these potential measures. So uptime, what's a noun? A time during which a machine, especially a computer, is in operation. We usually see it defined as some sort of percentage. More is better. 5 nines, 99.999%. Here's some questions for you. Does it include off hours? So working in healthcare with hospitals, well, they don't have off hours, right? You're in the emergency room. They want to go, well, we're going to lock the doors, close up, go home. Well, you're bleeding. That's okay. No, right? But there are other businesses. I used to work in bookstores, right? We closed. Even though I worked for Tower Books, used to be part of the Tower Records chain. Those guys were open from 9 a.m. to midnight every day of the week, Christmas and Thanksgiving included. We still closed. So say our point of sale system, if they were doing maintenance on overnight, nobody cares. But this measurement? Are you including the off hours, assuming there are any? How about maintenance windows? So some organizations will set up particular times, a consistent time where everyone knows that's when we're doing back-end maintenance. System won't be unavailable during that window, or maybe intermittently available. And maybe we do more announcements to kind of narrow that down. But say it is during, I take the thing down for a few hours to do necessary patching and other kinds of system maintenance. Does that count against my uptime measurement? So then that leads to these questions like, is tracking uptime keeping routine maintenance from happening? So I'm afraid to patch because, well, my numbers aren't looking so good, so I'd rather just let it roll, just not apply system patches. And you play with these numbers. There are lots of ways to play these numbers. Okay, we're going to carve out this maintenance window. All right, and that's not going to be included in the numbers. Okay, so I got maintenance tomorrow night, say, and I am doing everything possible to keep from rebooting a system that's in deeply bad shape to get it into that window to juice that metric. So you think about that one. That's this question. Do I even with this maintenance, even if I not include a maintenance window, here's this thing. It's Monday. I don't get the maintenance window for days, and I'm like, I don't want to reboot this thing because it's going to make my numbers look bad. And there's the other question too around this maintenance. What do users think about it? And I remember working in a real estate company. Well, our brokers were out doing deals all day. They come in and we were doing work late at night, but they'd be like, oh, yeah, I've been up all day and now I'm trying to get caught up and you're interrupting my access to the system. So even maintenance windows still have some issues with it. So reliability, is uptime a good metric? And I'm going to argue, and we're going to kind of expand on this as we go. I really appreciate a concept that comes from British Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery, and he called it grip. What he wanted to see in his subordinate commanders was grip, a real sense of what their subordinates are doing, what they're capable of, how they are at any moment. And if we depend too much on just an uptime as a metric, we have no grip. We're looking at a number. Everyone goes, oh, look at our uptime number. Isn't it great? Or, oh, our uptime number is terrible. Well, maybe that uptime number, if we really had a grip on what's going on, it may be, for example, people have bad code releases, and that can really knock our numbers around. We did do reasonable or adequate testing beforehand, but under full load, these particular software or some combination of hardware and software that missed our testing caused us some reliability issues. So an over-reliance on any metric is always a problem. So let's move on to talk about service level agreements. So usually some sort of tiering, emergency, urgent, normal, other, project. There's a lot of different ways to do it. And then we set up a lot of things to do it. Usually define some kind of response time, time to resolution. Now, I know everyone is going to say, oh, we were very careful, and this is a category 1, and this is a category 2, and they're arbitrary. They can be less arbitrary, but they're still always arbitrary because we have to make this decision of, I know like this one group totally depends on this application, but there's like 3 of them. They don't really affect revenue. I'm not going to give that like the all hands on deck alarm for that application. I'm just not. I'm going to give it a lower priority. Now, that sometimes that's effectively the same thing depending on workload. So if the guys are standing around, but if there is this 5-alarm fire and this other thing that's like really, really important to your group, and escalations are done for VIPs typically, or sometimes just difficult customers. So I remember this. First help desk job. The CEO's admin's on the phone. Hi, okay, yeah. Oh, don't rush is what she's saying to me. And I am like hitting this panic button. I'm like, get me a technician right now. Before the echoes of the sound of her phone hanging up have died, I want a technician in her face working on her. Now, Did that represent the level of service that we did to the other customers in the organization? Oh, no. No, no. They did not pay enough to do that. But we didn't want to upset the CEO, especially because we were an outsourced company working on site. So CEO is going to love us because we're right there. Okay. So we do this escalation for VIPs, again, speaking to his arbitrariness. And then sometimes just poor definition when the service request comes in may lead to an unnecessary escalation. My personal favorite, I remember I was ready to fire someone over this when I was managing a company. Customer just calls up, say network's down. He hands the phone to me. I was also senior network engineer. And I looked at him like, you need to talk to him a little before you hand that phone to me. And I think I may have said something like, if you expect to keep your job. Because the network's down alone as a sentence doesn't mean much. If you've worked in any kind of IT organization, you recognize sometimes that what they're saying is, well, the website I spend most of my time on is down. Doesn't mean they can't get to other websites, they can't get email, they can't do all kinds of other functions. They're just, to them, the network is down because this one critical thing to them is not working. And qualifying that as anyone else having a problem is really super important before you hit this unnecessary escalation. And then you may have the service level agreement may define different tiers, normal business hours, off hours, but then we work to the service level agreement. A friend of mine tells a story about ACD queues, automatic call distribution. Usually they generate a lot of metrics. So how long did people wait in the queue? How long did the technician work on that ticket? And if you have a push towards a metric, what one technician was doing was essentially saying, oh, well, go to this FTP site, download these drivers, check them out, and try and hang up on the guy as quickly as humanly possible to get his metric down, and then close the ticket so his tickets look great. So he has this great metric. The guy has to call back in. If he gets the same guy, he opens a new ticket. Oh, look at all the tickets I do. I'm so great. How quickly I turn them around. We start working again to this metric, and we have no grip. We don't know what's really going on. Oh, I have this many emergency tickets. Were they really emergencies? How many of them were just like monitoring anomalies? So we thought we got alarms that said something was down. It wasn't really. It was a problem with the monitoring system. Could that be? Do we have some user who's freaking out kind of unnecessarily? Oh, the entire phone system isn't working. Oh, right, because you got a busy signal because the trunk line was full. And if you dial, rather than dialing an internal extension, if dialed the direct number, it would have gone around the trunk and would have worked, right? But, it was an emergency, all hands on deck, here we go, fixing this thing. It happens. So even organizations, and I appreciate it. I worked for a director, I think, that had a really good sensibility around this, and he worked very hard around these metrics, but they were still kind of a joke in a way. And the reason I say that is that he had two business units. To explain this a little deeper, in large organizations sometimes, corporate IT may only have a very, very minimal function, and then business units may be able to build their own, either bringing in outsourced people or hiring employees to do that function, and they're responsible for paying for it. So what that means is the organizations that have low budgets, have a small number of people, don't get as much done. Units with very, very high budgets where they're delivering a lot for the company, they can have that high level of service, and it can make sense. It really can. If one organization I know about that, well, let me finish with this. My group, my division, we didn't have enough people. They signed an SLA, but without the budget behind it to actually make it work. And it was terrible. Every morning, we were dealing with all the escalations from the day before for all the stuff that was going to age out on SLA. So we were kind of running around every morning trying to get caught up. We were never caught up. And it wasn't because we weren't trying. It's just we didn't really have staffing enough to deal with the ticket load we had. We kept busy. Trust me on that. This other example, actually, I forgot what the example was. Oh, sorry. But, you work to the SLA. If that's what you're doing, again, you have no grip. You don't really know what's going on. Am I happy getting my 2-day response, which it was in standard? Maybe not. And maybe there's other reasons. And maybe as a technician, this ticket's been bounced around a bunch of times, and I go to move in the system, and I got to fill out some exception report as to why it missed the SLA. It's like I've had it fall 5 minutes. Like I'm not happy with that. So any metric is always they say the map is not the territory. Any metric stands in for quality and reliability. So meeting these, setting up SLAs is not a bad thing. Meeting the SLAs is not a bad thing, and it could be a signal that you are working reliably. But you really have to stay on top, and both this and uptime, stay on top of what's really happening. Are we cheating these numbers to make ourselves look good rather than really being reliable? And are we willing at any moment to fess up and say, our infrastructure is a mess right now? We're not going to be able to meet our SLAs. We're not going to be able to meet our uptime numbers. We're going to need to spend some money and some time fixing a lot of endemic issues. That's kind of where I want to head to with this. So, customer service. Can you be reached? A small company, sometimes you have an IT guy that's just MIA all the time. Oh, they're really busy. They're always never at their desk. It's possible that they're out, at the comic book store or whatever. You call them, they're like, "Oh, I'm busy." Like, the entire network's down. Oh, I'll get there as soon as I can. Right? Are you reachable? Do you answer in ways that are intelligible to inside IT, outside IT? Right? And I'm thinking non-technical organizations, or there's non-technical groups even in tech organizations, right? Your shipping and receiving people are typically not your like super duper programmers, right? That's why they're filling out the FedEx stuff and not writing code. I'm not saying they're in any way deficient. I'm just saying they have a different skill set. So if you throw a lot of coding jargon at them, they may look at you a little blankly, like, what does this mean? Do you keep your word? And this goes both for you as an individual and an organization. So if you say, for example, during an outage, next update will be in an hour, did you do the update? Did you send out that message that said still down, still in problem determination, next update in an hour? Did you keep your word? And this is important. And I've seen things too of making appointments with customers, and they need to keep their word as well. But something where you actually need them in front of them. So you say, hey, can I come by your desk around 10 this morning, and I'd like to work on your problem. And you're not going to make 10. Now, here's the thing about reliability. This is also in some definitions around integrity. So that 10 a.m. appointment, and I may hedge you a little. I may be a little early, a little late. So say about 5 minutes either way. But say I'm stuck somewhere else and it's urgent and I can't get out of it, and I'm going to be a half hour late or more than that. Key thing is, as soon as I know that, I need to let my customer know. I can't make that 10 a.m. appointment. And that's keeping my word. It's not as good as showing up at 10 a.m., but at the same time, I'm not doing good service. I'm not doing good customer service to just drop something. Well, I got another appointment. I got to go run off and do it. Which sometimes structurally we create those kind of conundrums for our technicians. If are they working tickets, or are they working projects that have timelines? How do I make that work? So keeping your word, and if you've had to reschedule twice, and it's not the customer's fault because they had some things come up, the third time, then you really do have to figure out how to meet them that third time. For sure, just do it. Do you close the loop? Closing the loop is, I ask you, hey, can you take 10 2-meter Ethernet cables and drop them off over in this closet in the other building? When you're done with it, you tell me that it got done, or do I have to chase you down? Do I need to constantly remind you? Hey, at task, did you get it done? Oh yeah, okay. Well, I'll do it. Because frankly, if you're not reliable. If what I have to do is stand over you, and then we're going to go over to wherever the parts depot is and get the Ethernet cables and follow you over to the room. I could have delivered the cables myself. And the fact all the time I wasted reminding you to get it done made it even worse. And our customers don't like it either. Like, hey, you're supposed to, I haven't heard from you, you're supposed to schedule something about this ticket. Um, if it's something where the parts got ordered, if you're not keeping them in the loop, or they keep calling you, oh, hey, have you got the parts yet? Have you got the parts yet? You're not keeping them informed. Do you need to constantly be reminded, hounded? What you're essentially doing in a lot of these cases, now, if I'm your boss and I'm hounding you, that's one thing. But if it's your customer that's hounding you, well, you just made them an unpaid member of your IT staff. So they're minding the ticket queues, going, hey, when is this going to get done? Because you're not. You're not keeping them informed. That's not keeping them informed is not being reliable, or shall we say, being reliably bad, which we don't want. And when you give an appointment window, does it look like, well, I'll show up between 9 and 5, 8 noon, noon and 5? When DSL first came out, that's what AT&T gave me for an appointment window. And not just that, I was supposed to be home all day. And it's before we really could work from home so easily, particularly because I didn't have an internet connection, so that really kind of made it not work. I was there all day. They never told me they weren't going to show up. They just didn't show up. I was mad as a hatter because I took the day off to meet them. They told me the entire day as a window, and nobody showed up, and no call. I also remember talk about reliably bad. There was a service provider for a server vendor no longer in business. They're required, so there's the name's still around, but I'm not going to quite name names. But this one Vanstar, that service provider, they're gone now. They folded their doors. God knows they got merged with somebody. But I remember they gave me a long window, something like noon to 5. So really didn't give me a chance to get a lunch break in that day. And it's like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Calling up the number. Where's my stuff? And they're like, oh, well, the parts didn't ship, so we're not going to show up today. Been really nice to know. At some point, before 4 p.m., you knew you were not going to get another delivery. You were not going to be able to service my ticket. So why not tell me that was reliably bad? I make a joke, the last one there, 9 a.m., 10 p.m. People ask for crazy stuff. So this other thing about customer service, are you meeting every customer request no matter if it's needed or reasonable? And again, this reliability. I think one of the things about being reliably good is there are times I had a customer one time with a ticket, oh, this network is not, not robust. Here's all these things, not enough bandwidth, blah, blah, blah. It actually had a really big connection. It was a point-to-point radio link, about half a gig going to it, and that site had 10 gig circuit. So, and the building at that point was almost vacant. It was sort of between users. He was one of the few people in the building. So he had a private, say, about half gig. No, not perfect. Radio has a lot of problems, a lot of overhead to it, but still half a gigabyte, 500 megs for just you. In a corporate environment, you get like 5 meg circuits, 10 meg circuits. Bigger stuff now, 25s, 50s, maybe 100, but this guy's sitting about half a gig. He's doing fine. Real problem was he needed more memory in his laptop to open big Excel files. But he was sure it was the network. And he'd done all these testing, and he wanted to give me a long lecture about it. Right? I'd done talk for a while because that's the right thing to do. Right? But that's when, it's just who's venting a bit, and I'm like, okay, hang on. I mean, can I ask you a couple questions just to kind of clarify a few things? Okay, how did you know this? How do you test this? Oh, okay. Right? Be nice. I know some IT guys. Well, the IT organizations are not known necessarily for their good their good people skills, right? That's the joke in office space, right? I have people skills. So, yeah, you may be tempted in a situation where this customer is just kind of tearing you down, taking it personally. You're like, you're an idiot. This is this. No, right? Be good about it. But on the other hand, I did have other stuff to do, so it's like, okay, let me go for bed. And I'm like, and work with him, trying to understand if maybe he's really pointing something I can't see. That's one of the important things about grip. It's what am I not seeing? And maybe in that situation I wasn't seeing something really important, but as he described it, I'm looking at stats, or I'm pulling all stats for circuit utilization and the rest, and I'm like, man, that's not. doesn't fit with what he's telling me. Sure, there are things like microbursts, but if he's opening really, really large files, it's not going to be a microburst. And a small enough file with a big enough circuit, sure, you click on the link and at first it starts giving you, a couple of K. It's going to keep ramping up as it doesn't have to do any retransmits. It's going to keep making the window size bigger and bigger and taking in larger chunks of data at a shot so that it can transmit faster and faster. It's going to speed up. With a really good sized circuit, you never top out because you never pick a file that's big enough, if you're working with anything reasonable, to ever max the circuit out. The window sizing won't be able to scale up fast enough to just not grab the whole file. So something was not right. You need to get to the bottom of it. And sometimes, and this last point about is the business leadership in alignment with IT being able to say no, and that goes to this prior. Sometimes it's one of the best things for the company to be a reliable organization is you do say no. And sometimes it's things like, I can't tell you how many times I had building a new building or taking an acquisition or a significant remodeling an area, and the architect wants to come back and give you a phone booth to put your equipment in. And for those of you who haven't seen phone booths, they're not very big, right? They're enough to stand in. They were usually just enough to close the door. You can kind of cram two people in there kind of uncomfortably. It was more until you had to leave the door open. People crammed out the edge of the phone booth. So it's not Doctor Who, right? The phone box. It's not Doctor Who. No. The outside is the same as the inside, and it's tiny. So that is a moment when I'm saying, no, you're saying, well, you just want a space. And it's like, well, look, if I can't reliably service my equipment, that can have an impact on the company. Could be things like I don't have air volume there to really keep the thing properly cooled, therefore shortening the service life of the equipment, causing an unexpected failure and an inopportune time, because they're always inopportune, aren't they? But if your business leadership is like, oh no, we can't, you can't do that. You can't say that. That's a problem, and it leads to an unreliability. There's things you need to do. For example, having a large enough closet that's serviceable, or you think about some of these things where I've seen closets where you have to get on some crazy ladder to go just patch cables, and maybe you have to go climb up a ladder and then do a 90-degree turn to be able to service equipment. And trying to like replace a stack member, kind of unsafe. It's hard to be able to get all the cables out of your way and get it unscrewed, and you're up on this really tall ladder. It's a mess. Can you reliably say no and have that backed up by your business unit? These are important questions. And again, it's coming down to grip. So having some customers upset at you isn't always a bad thing. There are people sometimes just being unreasonable. But don't ignore your customers. So the guy, again, going back to that example, the guy who's saying, "Oh, this is not this network's horrible. It's bandwidth's terrible." Maybe he had a point. I solved this problem. He was happy. Well, I didn't exactly. I had someone from desktop solve this problem and get a memory for his laptop. But that is the important thing. We're trying to solve the problem, and we're also keeping things on, cost control. Maybe you got a bunch of phone people. They really want to have cordless headsets, but they're more expensive than a corded headset. Maybe it's not justified. Well, sometimes I have to get up and I have to go pull stuff with the printer. Yeah, I know sometimes. Excuse me for a moment. I need to grab something on the printer. Can I put you on hold for just a moment? Right? Yeah, maybe. But it's a tough thing if the manager is going to be like, well, she's been here a long time and she really should have something not. Okay, I'm saying no, and then you're like, no. Can we consistent? Can we be reliable on our no? It's a great question. Tracking systems, help desk, ticket system, lots of names. I've used lots of them. I lost count. I think I was over 10 different systems I've used over my career. Some of them I've been back to a couple times, different companies, but I think I can name at least 10. A couple I can't remember what they even called anymore. I sort of remember the interface vaguely. And They usually create some distinctions: projects, tasks, incidents, and each probably has their own SLA and maybe some different procedures. By different procedures, it may actually mean like how you handle it inside the software, how I move the ticket along or request along. Newer systems often have some kind of customer portal for request entry and tracking. Now, this again gets to that question about reliability. Am I making my customer manage their own requests? Are they my uncompensated queue manager? So am I on top of that ticket's been sitting for 2 weeks with no response? Am I, um, am I, are they the ones doing it? So then it's kind of a pull system. They're pulling like, hey, I need a response, rather than us staying on top of those tickets. And how are your queues managed? Is the workload balanced? And that's the interesting one. It's never going to be straight numbers, right? Oh, you have tickets. He has 5 tickets. You have 5 tickets. You're equal. Not necessarily. The things may be vastly different in their scope, and also capabilities. Maybe me versus another technician, I could do 20 tickets in the time it takes that person to do 5 because I'm more experienced. Could be. And how are you actually managing these things? Is it the thing you really hate to do so you don't even do it, so you're not really reliable at managing that queue? Or is the kind of thing like every morning there's a big push to kind of clear the queue, or towards the end of the day there's a big push to clear the queue out? So as customer, maybe all of a sudden get all this activity every morning. I want to come help. I want to come get your ticket because they're getting beaten up for maybe going to miss the SLA, rather than sort of staying on top. Well, he spent the end of the day playing foosball rather than staying on top of the queue. So that's why you're running around first thing in the morning. And now your experience for your customers is rush technician. Like, I got to get this closed. I got to meet with you. And I can't get a machine this morning. Can't do that. And other ways to, um, can someone pick up another's tickets and work them? And are the notes clear? And I have to tell this story. Worked for one organization in the help desk role, and we had 2 major campuses, states apart. They'd been in acquisition, headquarters one different state, one local to me. And we had a customer. Now, our perspective was, oh, those guys were flaky. I don't know the truth. That was just our perspective on it. They were kind of flaky. But I did have someone out of that campus on the road calls our help desk because he doesn't like them, thinks we can help him. Hey, I'm having a repeated problem with my laptop. Is there any way you can help me with it? So we look into it, look up the user, look at his tickets. Oh, this ticket. The type field is something like hardware, laptop, repair. The description was broken. The notes were fixed. That's all it told me. Now, we were part of a large outsource organization, so I perhaps would have been able to direct him to a local depot that might be able to get parts for him. There might have been something we can do, but I needed more information. I had no idea what they did. So for me to dig in, we'd have to sit there and try and figure out, and particularly for hardware, the hardware guys I worked with were excellent. There was a guy named Chuck that his notes were a work of art. What's the manufacturer part number? What's our stock keeping unit SKU number for that? What was the original PO number, proof of purchase? You'd have all that information at your fingertips. So in that case, I probably would have figured out, oh, okay, there's laptop battery. Oh, wow, they're replacing that battery pretty quickly. Something's kind of wrong. Maybe I could have involved Chuck or one of his guys to maybe work with the customer. Let's try and figure something out, and might have been able to get him fixed on the road. Don't know. But in this case, no one could work that ticket. And I've seen too changes. I remember my colleagues, I picked up a change for them because scheduling difficulties. And they're applying 2 patches. There's nothing in those notes that told me there was an order to those patches needed to be applied in. So I did them. And then there were problems because they weren't applied in the right order. I wouldn't know that because there was nothing in his change that told me that. Oh, they had to be applied. Like Joe, sorry, no naming names. Sorry. How would I know that? And if the customer sees the note, will they have any idea what the status of their ticket is? And reminder, please remember this one. Customer's a big jerk, just doesn't get in writing. Doesn't. At best, you're always diplomatic, even in a field that the customer doesn't normally see, because someone may decide to show them that note. So if it's inappropriate, harassing in some way, um, phobic, homophobic, transphobic, whatever, phobic, yeah, that can get you fired. And rightfully so in a lot of these cases. If you wrote like nasty homophobic things in the ticket because you don't like this person, that's how you believe, that's not right in a work environment. It just isn't. And political, fine, right? That's coworker, just deal, right? That's not the place to have that. You have your personal beliefs, you work for the company, you work for that company. If you don't like this, like having to service these people, quit. Yeah, quit. But the other thing about the notes, are they anyway clear? Can anyone figure out what's going on? Right? Be reliable. Create notes that help. If anyone has to go look at it, you're out on vacation, you're out sick for a day, customer wants an update, they can go in those notes and actually make sense. And sort of the bigger part of this, and this is part of this whole idea of grip, right? So Field Marshal Montgomery had this structure when he was running 21st Army Group, which was the large group of armies that the British fielded in Northwest Europe in the end of World War II. So it was partially British, partially Canadian, Polish, Belgian, Dutch, a lot of other miscellaneous, and included the U.S. Ninth Army as part of 21st Army Group. So hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people under command. He could not be keeping track of like every little squad of soldiers out doing their jobs. But he had an overall responsibility that any individual squad failing starts to log roll into bigger problems. So we needed to stay on top of it. And his culture was he had mid-grade officers, majors, somewhere around there, that he would send out. He trusted he'd send out to various headquarters to try and get a sense of what's going on. So what he's interested in is the kind of feel you get from actually being out in the field. Is there a sense of panic in that headquarters? Do they even have any sense of what's going on? So if you've then gone to a subordinate headquarters, say it's you're visiting battalion, visiting company headquarters, which is the next level down, and they're in a mess, and the battalion's like, no, everything's fine, everything's just great. That's the kind of thing that's great feedback of where the general might need to provide additional reserves or where units may need to be pulled out of the line or replaced. There's a lot of important information, and that's the seniority of a person like that. That he created a culture where there was this feedback loops. And there's lots of judgment about the guy, and he's got personal issues. It's a very interesting set of biographies. I read Nigel Hamilton's biographies of about 2,000 pages. Interesting. Or is it more? I think maybe it's 2,500 pages. Interesting guy, interesting piece of history. But that was a system that worked. It really worked for him. And talking about reliable culture, some questions. So again, this is the soul searching, right? I want you to soul search you and the organization. Do people come to project meetings with tasks updated, materials read, and ready to contribute? And here's this soul searching. So you're going to run a meeting for the next day. Do you have an agenda? Thank you very much. Any materials that they needed to see, did they get it long enough ahead of time to actually get a chance to look at it? Sending it out 5 minutes before the meeting starts is not notification. That's covering your butt. Oh, I sent those out before the meeting. Right. So now you're not really going to be able to talk about it, or we're going to sit there and read for 5 minutes. No. And for you, right, that you've updated your project tasks. Close this, put notes in that, change the due dates, that kind of stuff, can make this stuff run smoothly, can make a lot of these meetings less gruesome. Frankly, how many project meetings you've gone into that everyone in that room hasn't read any material, hasn't updated anything. We're doing these status updates, and it's the same update is last week. Oh, I haven't got a chance to get to that. Right, as dates are slipping. And that reliability, when those dates slip, it's hard then to plan work. I need to an example, I was doing a major change of an email system from one that was horrible to a current version of Microsoft Exchange, which I know some people don't like Exchange, but it did me well. I was happy with it. Um, and they pushed me into a date because, oh, there's going to be this software rollout that, if you push the date out a week, they blew that date by weeks, right? I was mad as a hatter because it's like I really needed the time. It really was hard on me physically. So I was responsible for a lot of the tasks to get that project in on time. And the other group not being reliable, hey, that created an impact. I got held to a date. We made it, but I didn't need to. And you're saying, well, you're going to slip dates too. How's that reliable? Well, there were certain of the tasks that we needed to do a lot better job with. Importing the calendars was a complete disaster. And I know I know the guy's gonna blame. Oh, it was the software. You needed to test it better. It was a real disaster. And if we had more time, we could have worked through those issues. We had to go live. We did it. It was a mess. Now, this reliability, do people hoard equipment, licenses, because they can't count on you for timely repair? This is one of the things about having an unreliable IT organization. So I hoard equipment. I give you a loaner laptop, it never comes back because I put it in the drawer because I know next time my primary laptop breaks, you'll get around to fixing it sometime or other. I'm not going to get a lot of updates. I have another laptop to work on. One of my colleagues, their laptop breaks. I have this loaner. I'm going to slip them because I can't trust you. Keeping licenses. Oh, furniture for God's sake. One company I wanted to hoard furniture because what happened was I had an opening. I lose somebody. I had an opening. They go steal his chair. Oh, we hired this new person. They don't have a good chair. Why didn't you order one when you hired this person? Oh, well, we're gonna order, right? And then my person shows up and they're in some wreck of a chair because you know they stole the chair I had. I'm serious. And if you see my face, I'm so grumpy about it, right? Um, reliability. Our deadline's a joke for some or all members. Do weekly reset tasks, task dates. Just yeah, push down another week, push down another week. When you break your word, how do you handle it? And that's a really, really, really important question. When you break your word, how do you handle it? It will happen. I'll guarantee it. Honesty. Have you in your life never walked off with somebody else's pen? If you're of any age, that's fairly high probability you have. You didn't mean it, but you may reach in your pocket and realize, where did this pen come from? Right. You were doing something, you thought it was yours, slipped in your pocket, you were distracted. It happens. Absolutely. How do you handle it? If you ever done things like landmark education, this is one of their favorite things. They love playing in this realm. This is a great one. Right. So their methodology says we acknowledge the agreement we had. So the agreement can be, I wasn't supposed to take your pen. Sorry. We acknowledge that exists. I'll be more careful next time. Right? What are you going to do about it? If you just get mad. So you have a service level agreement, says time to resolution 3 days, and it's been 2 weeks, and you really haven't been keeping the customer informed. Maybe there isn't really good excuses, right? Maybe you just go, well, it's fixed, in that hostile tone, which we sometimes have run into service providers of one sort or another. It's like, fixed. What do you want? What do you do about that? That's really important. And there was some research I saw at one point years ago that talked about it. It's this recovery is actually a huge part of keeping our relationship together. And they talked about, for example, in the travel business, there was one that was Club Med. They had a group coming in on a charter. The charter had just been a disaster, so they broke out had a big party when they arrived. All kinds of like alcohol and snacks and just good stuff, and they made it very festive. And what that did for them can make up for the disaster of the charter. And it wasn't Club Med's charter. It wasn't they weren't directly responsible for it. They were just made aware of the problems of this particular charter. And if you don't know Club Med, they're resorts, right? They have resorts all over the world. But getting there, you're like, wow, they made this thing really kind of cool. It was a great time. That's the kind of thing you write home about. You may write home about the charter and give them a lot of grief, but Club Med you can't speak highly enough about. And they said something like a bad experience I think you share with 8 people, a good experience you share typically with 2. The idea being that, look, for every time I do a good recovery, I got to do that 4 times to make up for 1 bad time. So that's why this is important. When you break your word, and you're going to, at best, you always get to a plateau where you realize, oh, I'm doing a great job keeping my word. Then you start to realize, oh, wow, I'm not doing this well. I could do this better. It just, I remember an English teacher I had, I like to talk about, the movies, right? And the safecracker would run sandpaper on the tips of the fingers to better feel the tumblers of the safe he's cracking. In the same way, we're kind of, sanding our fingers just to feel better of, am I keeping my word? And it's keeping these questions in your head are really great, because it's a question you want to keep answering, because there's some benefits to being a reliable organization. We'll get to that. Do you get called out by other team members? And this is in this culture. Do you get called out by other team members, business partners, and or your leadership? So you're not keeping your word. Now, there's moments, right? You're going through a divorce. Parent just died. Your pet died. Something that's got you off. You're really not doing a good job keeping your word right now because you're in depression, or you're deep financial problems, and you're getting harassed by credit collections people and the rest of it, and you're having trouble keeping it together. You're not keeping your word. Well, with delicacy, it's still appropriate to be called out. And if your organization doesn't allow for that, and that means subordinates to leadership, leadership to subordinates, other team members, colleague to colleague. I've done it. It's not always popular. It's not always comfortable. In fact, most of the time it's not comfortable. I had a boss that the feedback my partner and I were getting about our boss was that users are afraid to come talk to him because he was going to yell at them. We took him aside, said, this is unacceptable. This is the feedback we're getting. His answer was sort of gritty. Who are they? Okay, fine. Right? It's like, this is why we're not going to tell you who they are. But this is going to be really bad when these users start going to the CEO, your boss, instead of you, to get problems fixed. CEO does not want to hear about our problems. He wants them handled. That's going to make my life and my partner's life and your life much worse. We do not want that. In your culture, can you do that? Say, hey, I noticed the last couple of weeks, every week you're pushing back deadlines. What's going on? Because it may be appropriate to say, hey, I'm just overwhelmed. Do we need to bring in some contractors? Do we need to assign the task to other people? What needs to happen? Not reliably communicating that is a problem for the entire team. Now all our schedules are a mess. We're going to miss our critical dates, right? And the last one is a promise to do better, an empty ritual. Companies do that sometimes. Oh, in school, the school bully. Oh, we promise never hit again. Yeah. It's just this thing we do, and then we just forget about it, and it happens again and again. And I talk about, you may hear me talk about HR organizations, and there seems to be, so the two polar opposites are what I call Huggy Bear and the protector. The Huggy Bear is sort of like strokes the employee's head. Oh, there. In the worst case, it was something like telling a manager who said to an employee, "Hey, when you need to be away from your desk for an extended period, can you let me know so I can make sure, because they needed it to sign for deliveries, that I'll make sure that gets covered." And HR said, "Oh, you can't tell her that." What? I didn't say she couldn't go see you guys, go talk to HR. I was just saying, hey, if you're going to be gone, let me know. Oh, can't do that. That was Huggy Bear. That was too far on like taking care of the employee. It's a simple request. The protector is like, policy is if you're more than 2 minutes late, you'll be written up. So I'm going to write you up. I don't care that there was a tanker truck that exploded on the highway right in front of you, and you barely missed being killed, and the rest of it. I don't care. You're getting a write up. I need to be fair to the rest of the employees. Yeah. So maybe we have this culture that's we make these empty sort of rituals about whatever. And sometimes that empty ritual sometimes has to do with productivity. Hey, this guy brings in 6 million in commissions a year. He can do no wrong. Period. And I'm sorry, I'm using the male pronoun a lot. I'm sorry, caught myself on that one. Okay. And how do you know? Um, how will you know? Do you survey your users, and not just leadership? So hey, yours and say your direct reports. How are we doing, guys? Oh, we're doing great. Well, one, if it's that immediate circle, well, if you're writing the reviews, they have a reason to go, everything's great, boss, as long as they can get away with it. Are you surveying everyone? Are you kind of looking in the corners? Some things may tell you you're not reliable. Our request volume is really low relative to the number of users. And what this comes into, and I've seen this at different phases in different companies, when you're really bad, users just stop asking. The thing that your computer will be mostly broken, and you're like, I am not letting them touch this. It still works about 80% of the time. That's better than what shape I'll get it back in if I let those guys at it. Reliably bad. That can be a sign. Now, it's when you do a cultural turnaround, you start bringing in good people and you start changing your processes, things that work, you're going to have a spike because they're going to start pulling all these things out of drawers. It's like, well, it's been broken for like the last 2 years. I need it to work. And I need it now. Of course, when you're a technician and somebody's handing you this thing covered in dust, and you're like, now what? Like, you're gonna yell at me over this? Like, yes, I am, because I need it now, because the last guys were such idiots. Like, I couldn't get it fixed, but I've been needing to use this for the last 2 years. Right. And users are often hostile or work diligently to get their tickets escalated. If you work in the help desk, right, so a great sign when people are constantly trying to push you to escalate their tickets. And I get it. I mean, one of these companies I worked at, customer, volume was high. I didn't have time to really work with a lot of my customers. I was mostly writing tickets and dispatching them because I had a high call volume to deal with. And so they're asking me, and I'm like, well, how long do you think? About 2 weeks. What? Yeah. Well, you see, that group has in their queue, they have a 30 ticket backlog, and each of the technicians has about 30 tickets. It'll take them about 2 weeks to clear and get to your ticket. What? I'm sorry, it's the way it was. You may give them a priority boost to try and get them a little higher up the ticket, but you can only go so far. Now, the other ways are there's some engineer, everybody's doing a drive-by or calling him or paging him. One company, we had an overhead paging system. He kept being, blah, can you come to my office? Blah, can you come to my office? Because they trusted him. Then we can do good work. Those are some signs. That's the kind of thing you got if, it's what the old Western movies, with the Native American with his ear to the railroad track, the train's coming, whatever. You got to have your ear to the ground for this stuff. That's that grip. You want to know when you're unreliable. That you want to know. Because tell you what, from the lowest level to the highest, you're going to get fired when you're not. Eventually. Some organizations are going to put up for way too longer than they should have. Years with incompetent people. I've seen it. Eventually, though, you're gone. So what if you are unreliable? Those who are reliable will be sought out by the users, and this may cause low morale for your best performers. So if you're in a more senior role, or more supervisory management role, this is an important thing to be aware of. The people who are going to stay are your worst performers. If you have an unreliable organization, they're going to stick around because it's a great job for them. They can be incompetent, they can be lazy, they can be surly, and they can keep their job. Maybe they get raises and training. So they have this kind of good-looking resume, but they're useless. Thank you very much. And your best performers are looking for a new job because they're covering all everybody else's work. Business units may seek to build their own IT organization or look to an outsource firm. Now, some have done that structurally on purpose. And they did it because, look, these other business units have very low margins. We're going to give them our SLAs are going to be pretty loose with these guys. Another group, in this particular example, in the big tax and audit companies, tax and audit don't make a lot of money. They don't make a high margin. They make a lot of money because a lot of people need to have their books audited at their public companies, right? And then you like to go to the big companies right? But their consulting side, no, they make good money on that side. So having that organization with their own IT organization, well, it can make sense because they can afford it. And the idea of, look, the audit guy makes okay money. The consultant guy makes good money with high profit. So when that high profit gets stalled because they're waiting around to get their IT fixed, that's a problem. That pays for itself very quickly. That can make sense. Now, there are other costs, though, that are beyond the fiscal. Right? So the other business units go, oh, yeah, it takes me 2 weeks to get it fixed. You get it fixed like the same afternoon. I'm chopped liver. Well, yeah, you are because I'm making like 2% on you, and I'm making like 70% on this guy. Profit margin. So, yeah. Reorg, reengineering, paralysis by process. These are some of the results of unreliability. Now, changing management structure may be absolutely appropriate, but it also may make the problem worse. If the underlying unreliability is not recognized and addressed, you got to own it. You got to own it. And I don't mean joking about it, like, oh yeah, I never fill my tickets, ha ha ha. No, you got to own it, which is like, I got to figure out a better way to do this. You got to do that. So you're going to reorg. Well, I'm going to have more supervisors. Eastern Airlines, in the last days as an airline, I read an article once that said they had a manager for every 2 employees. They were watching and they all got cameras, did all this stuff because employee morale was in the dumps. Well, do you think it made it better when there's one manager for every 2 of you? So there's almost always someone looking over your shoulder. It did not. It was part of the downward spiral. It was a disaster. So in that case, sort of management reorging did not help the problem. They didn't own some of their basic problems. And yes, better designs and better process can curb some human fallibilities. That's why we're going to do templates. That's why we're going to do standards. We're going to do a lot of these things. We're going to curb that. But you cannot take the place of addressing unreliability in an organization. So you have, and I'll give you an example. In the car rental business, when I was in the business, and it's still true for most of the companies, in the old days, they'd buy a car and then they'd have to sell the car. Modern period, a lot of the American manufacturers in particular, they didn't want to downsize their production. So one of the ways to put more fleet out was, rather than having rental car companies have to resell those used cars, they'd take them back and then they'd refurbish them and give them back to their dealers as these certified used cars. So you see these certified used. Some of that's lease return, but a big chunk of that's rentals, particularly for the major companies, Chrysler, GM, Ford. That certified is often rental fleet. And people abuse rental cars, sort of. Yes, some, but not a lot. Odds are, I think, are probably in some pretty decent shape. I could tell you more about that sometime if it really mattered. They need to hit a certain condition when they get turned in. And one of my last jobs in that industry was I was the manager in charge of getting these cars sold back to General Motors. And we had this checklist. I'll tell you what the guys did with those checklists. They were sticker. You'd stick it on the back passenger window, and you're supposed to check off each of these different major items and then sign it. What they do, they drew a line top to bottom through all the checkboxes. Did that mean they carefully thought about, okay, did I put all the accessories, the spare keys there, the the owner's manual, have I done all these different things? No. They did what they always did, and they just ran a line through things. I would then take the forms and then feed them back into their management, because I didn't control these guys. Made sense. Where they're not doing well. Provided a feedback loop. But frankly, one of the areas that was sending cars, I swear to you, they never went to the passenger side of the car. If there's a problem, it was always on that side. And it was pretty consistent. And it made my numbers look bad. So I'm getting yelled at my boss. I'm providing feedback, no response. That was a problem in the organization. That was an unreliability baked in that organization. I have my boss at the same level as this other guy that I'm feeding data back to. They both report to a common boss. The common boss is on my tail about my numbers. And I'm like, but look, I could do a lot better if we can get these things straightened out. I'm providing him the data. He's not doing a damn thing. Sorry, language. You needed, culturally, big boss needed to go, Joe, what's the deal? Why? We need to get this fixed. This is costing us money. What do you need to do? Maybe he needed to get a new guy. Maybe you need to write him up. I don't know. Something needed to happen. It wasn't happening. Now, this question, are you reliably just bad? So you're having a soul searching and asking yourself all these questions. You're like, I just really am awful, aren't I? Could be. And I'm sorry. And I'm going to talk about one of them in just a second. But sometimes you just don't have the resource to adequately compensate, properly staff, and meaningfully train. And this can be an opportunity. So Silicon Valley during the boom years, when the internet companies were taking off, the mainline companies making hardware, they didn't get great margins. A lot of competition. There were lots of Ethernet cards. They weren't making great money, particularly the smaller guys. So you hire somebody for half what they should be getting paid. Now, the opportunity here is, in that case, you're doing backups and you're running the server. You're doing all kinds of stuff that in a more mature, larger organization, you wouldn't get to touch. Not at all. No way. I've got server guys. I don't need you touching that. Stay away from it. You're going to make a mess out of it. And because they can't properly staff and train and compensate, well, they also probably have a little bit of junky hardware that's a little old. So, of course, you learn how to fix things the hard way. So you can learn all kinds of great stuff. You're going to learn about things like tape head drift the hard way. Oh, I pulling these backup tapes from like 2 years ago that I need to get some data off, and it's not working. Why? Oh, well, the alignment on the heads have slowly shifted, so the tracking angle on the tape isn't the same as it was back then. If you had another unit you were doing test restores with, you'd find that they'd start to diverge and the thing becomes unreadable. You need to have the one servicer replaced. That's when you have money. So you kind of learn these things, right? So maybe it's still under warranty, you call and they're like, oh, well, yeah, it's out of alignment. No, you're never going to be able to read this tapes. So you can use it as an opportunity. It can be a little tough. And usually the organization, to a degree, either we all hate each other because we're all kind of have the whip down on us, or we're all kind of in it together and we're just going to make it work. Now, the organization may lack critical skills to judge whether the technical issues are problems or the problems with the training or knowledge or what. And I can give you an example. I knew a company, they were going to do a port for OS2. Do you remember OS2? Maybe you don't. It wasn't IBM. IBM and Microsoft were working on what eventually was going to become Windows NT. They had a disagreement of falling out. IBM pursued OS2. Microsoft went ahead with NT. OS2 did have a niche in banks for a while, but I knew someone was big blubber of this thing, and there was a company that were going to make their product to run on the OS2 platform, and there were a lot of tickets, and with only the one guy had some issues with reliability in the eyes of his employers a lot. So when his tickets weren't getting fixed, they couldn't judge very well. Was it a problem with his technician? Was it a problem with IBM? They weren't really clear. They went with it was a problem with his technician. They were at least partially true, if not completely true. But and that also, I've I've been paid as a consultant just to interview people for senior positions. They don't really know how to ask questions to really delve into this guy's resume is any good. I've seen consulting companies that have been used as hiring shops because they're going to have a better ability to sort through if the person's technical or not. That's not our reliability. You're a small healthcare company. Hiring an IT guy can be challenging because I don't know if he's any good or not. If medicine, maybe you know medical billing, other pieces of it, but you don't necessarily know IT. Oh, Windows is just really unstable like that. Well, no, maybe it's you've got bad hardware. How do you know that? And of course, the interesting one is I want to bring up the subject of Dunning-Kruger, and that was some research that basically said, well, the skills that help you understand that you're incompetent are the skills that help you be competent. So sometimes we seriously misread our own competence. On one edge of that Dunning-Kruger scale, to be frank, as a senior person, there's a lot of times I'm all too aware of my own failings and shortcomings and lack of knowledge. And it can make me nervous sometimes when I'm approaching a problem. I'm like, oh, yeah, well. While someone who's sort of deep in the Dunning-Kruger curve is like, I can fix that. I'll just come in and do this. Now, they may, right? They can get lucky, but they're actually drastically incompetent, but they lack the skills to even know it. So they're like, oh, but see, I'll come in and I fixed it. Everything's great. And you're like, no, we took the company down. And this reliably bad, handling the basic tasks of your job, again, ended up letting someone go at a company, a lot of training, but like real basic stuff just wasn't getting. Couldn't be counted on for real basic troubleshooting, which is a critical skill in the IT realm. So these are the things like if you're really not handling your job, if you're constant answer everything, well, we need to hire consultants for everything. Obviously, there's great times for consultants. I'll use consultants for things like design review. If internally we don't really have the skills at it, bring in an outside shop. Either have them do a design, then we're going to kind of critique it and use that as a basis for our work, or come up with something, have them critique it. But can you handle those basic skills? Okay. Here's the deep challenges, though, in all this: identity. And this is to be careful how you identify. Ooh, that was terrible. How you use identity. When you're attached to it, oh, I'm the best server guy ever. Maybe, I don't know. Then what happens when something inexplicable happens? You can't explain it. Are you no longer the best server guy ever? And if that like crushes your whole identity, are you then now going to put up barriers to any kind of feedback that says you're not the best server guy ever? I'm not the best network guy ever. I'm sure of it. I've met people who are better than I am, absolutely. I think I'm good. I think I'm very good. But like the best ever, anyone who says that, I'm like ready to throw them out of my office. That it's rare. If you're one of those few that really are, you're not going to say it because you don't have to. And can your organization support anyone not knowing? And I've seen this one play out in awful ways. What do you mean you don't know? Like it's unacceptable. Like, okay, the network just went down. We're looking into it. What do you mean you don't know? You have to know. I don't. If I would have known ahead of time, I would have prevented it. So I'm going to gather data and, do a root cause, figure it out. But some organizations they cannot deal. That's a huge problem to reliability because you're forced to lie. Oh, here's the real cause. If they won't you do it, you're going to come up with something out of your backside because you want to get the people off your back, or you're worried about losing your job, or whatever it is. You're not telling the truth. They're not allowing you to do that. Reliability and integrity are never 100%. Never, 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 never. And they talk about for each order of magnitude of increase in reliability and quality is using an order of magnitude of expense. So, 5 nines to 6 nines may take me from like 6 figures to 9 figures in expense, or worse. So, as we climb up this ladder and get better at our reliability, better at our personal integrity, you're going to, as I described earlier, you're going to hit these plateaus. You look around and go, oh, I can be so much better at this. My communication, feedback, closing the loop. As you get practice with it, as you get good about providing feedback to each other, you just get better at it. And this is not to create endless lines of, some kind of weird telephone game where we're like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, I heard you, and some kind of weird constant circling thing. So we're never getting done. We're just constantly kind of communicating like, okay, yeah, I heard you, and I understand. Okay. You have to develop a culture where feedback is taught, coached, and valued. It's not easy. You're going to have some of these people who, like, the only thing in their life is to be good at this. I've done historical reenactment. It's like Civil War stuff. Civil War isn't mine, but whatever. It's not the point here. But you see some of these guys in that hobby, and they're got their sergeant stripes, or they're a colonel in I'm a colonel in the Kentucky militia, and it's really serious to them. They can't take feedback. You're a horrible colonel. You're an awful person. They can't take that feedback because their whole life's like, oh, see, I'm the colonel of the 7th Kentucky Cavalry, and right. Well, how they were colonel, right? They had a lot of money, so they got a bunch of guys who wanted to get into the hobby, and so they helped them get all outfitted. And oh, I'll be the colonel then. And this guy's a bit off, not good. He's way too attached to that. It's hard, and sometimes leaders are the biggest ones that are guilty. One of the companies I worked for, my first CEO there, he was accused that he would have his other C-level execs stand on top of the table in the boardroom to show that he was CEO. That's just weird, guys. That's weird. That is not developing a culture where feedback is taught, coached, and valued. You're just being an abusive jerk. I can prove I'm CEO. It doesn't accomplish things. Now, don't get me wrong. There are times when actually you do need to put a guy in his place. I try to never, ever do that publicly. But that kind of thing is just crazy. It made the papers when he got ousted. What else can help? Good hardware and software. Yeah, absolutely. And minimize the mix of versions and generations. The reason I say that is that the more different, when I was doing testing patching at one company, releasing Windows patches, well, we were using Dell Optiplex. We had a lot of generations though, because we couldn't keep things all within, say, a 3-year cycle. Dell recycles them about yearly, which is their consumer models recycle even faster. So we'd have even more models. We wanted to push out the patches to all those different models because what did happen sometimes, particular configurations, a particular patch may blow them up. The fewer we have, the more we can minimize our testing. When you look at consumer testing for things like your web page, oh good God, you got to test IE and Opera and Microsoft Edge and Chrome and Firefox and a bunch of different things and all kinds of versions and on different platforms. It's a lot of work. Do you buy enough memory? I hate this one. I really do. Sometimes, we save all this money because we put the absolute minimum amount of memory in the machine, and everyone suffers. Buy some more memory. Don't make it so onerous that no one ever gets a memory upgrade without sort of the CEO's personal say so, because it makes their job a lot harder. Do you buy enough disk? Server, certainly Now, we virtualize a lot. This is a little easier to manage, but still, if I'm constantly having to take off programs and delete stuff on my machine constantly just to keep it running, because I don't have a disk, that's a problem. Do you have an actual patching program that's monitored and your issues are addressed? Am I even a patching program? Well, do you have pilot users identified? These are the this is particular PCs. This was a great innovation, I think, on our part. I'm sure other people do it, but hey, we sort of came up on our own. Want to make sure we had the full portfolio of models. We also want to make sure we picked our users very carefully. We had some users that a problem with their computer would throw them off all day. Even if we could fix it right away, they would be non-productive like all day because it just shook them up that bad. And you're laughing, and I'm going to tell you, no, I knew a venture capitalist that the icons weren't right, and when you handed back his phone after you fixed it, I saw him shake. Can't say who, right? And I think he's a smart guy otherwise, but just like this was like not good for him. I don't know if he was shaking angry at me or he was like just it kind of threw him over the edge. I don't really know, but it's not just those sort of like people barely hanging on. They're really good people can be thrown off, if your machine blew up on them, right? Not a good thing. You want to make sure that you test that. Certainly in the healthcare environment, I wouldn't want to pilot anything in my ICUs, emergency departments, right? Unless I didn't have any choice. I've said that before. I'll keep mentioning that one. Like those, like no way, life and death. Like, oh my God, we lost all our monitoring equipment because of some bad patch, right? And they don't have enough nursing staff to put like someone beside each bed to make sure these people aren't dying. That's really, really bad. You do not want that, so don't do it. Um, so, um, and so the fewer different OS versions, different platforms, the better, right? Um, and then processes. Having things written down is critical. You can't repeat it if you don't have it written down. And I know, right? Bakers, your great grandmother or whatever, if she was a baker, probably like most of her recipes, she doesn't. I've known people with their great grandparents and such, like they had to work really hard to get a recipe out of them because they didn't have one anymore. Their parents taught them, well, it's got to feel like this. The dough feels like this. That's hard to put down on paper, but it's that's a craft. That's craft baking. Now, it's good to have enough skill to know that you've got too much water in the dough or too little water in a dough. I do a little baking too. I've got lots of talent. um, but if I don't have a written recipe, really helps you get in that ballpark. If not, it gets pretty hard. Communication is key. If tasks are assigned to you and you don't know, they don't tell you, then it's hard to be reliably good. All this stuff comes in. Oh, well, you should have been checking your queue. I've been out in the field all day. Well, this was like super urgent. If I don't have any mechanism to let me know I have it, and now my customer's mad, I didn't meet it. Well, you should have been able to check this thing. Well, it's really hard to check on my phone, right? And I was out doing this thing, and you all knew that. Measurements are great, but never, ever, ever this whole story. I talked about that call center time to resolution issue, right? He was manipulating his numbers to look good. You got to know what's behind there, because his customers are going to be upset because, well, he just told me to go down this thing. It wasn't the right thing. I couldn't figure out how to get into it. I'd call back like 3 times, and I kept getting him, and it was a terrible experience. They don't like it. They don't want to come back. There's a lot. Customers have a fair amount of inertia that they will kind of come back until you really push them out. But you don't want to push them out. Enough of that, they're gone. Try and eliminate steps that have no value to the end customer. In the lean production, it's called, the Japanese word is muda. And you think about it, one of the examples, when you get car service, there's a lot in that process you just like do not like paying for. So that time of like standing around trying to get your car back, there's this big old line of people. You really are not enjoying that experience. You had to get off work to get in there before the service desk closed, and then you're just hanging out waiting in all these cars, and you got to wait around while they pull your car up. The rest of it, it's like, no, you're not excited about paying for it. Repair is one thing that you don't want to do it. If you can get that out, people are very, very happy. And yes, I started at the beginning. You're a cost center. Do your job well and efficiently, so you're not spending on needless IT craft work. I mean by craft work, having to have really expensive people fix things because you don't have good systems and processes to make this work. You need to have someone really expensive to go do anything. Don't want that. And yeah, you'll get forced out. I will tell you, one of the companies, I can sort of name it, commercial real estate company, our brokers were placing a lot of IT companies. So the guy would say, "Oh, hey, why don't you use us? We're great. We'll save you all this money." We were good. We're a little underpaid, but we were good. We developed things well. A lot of the things they would have done to save money, we were already doing. We were ghosting machines. We were using remote support so we didn't have to drive someone out to our remote offices all the time. Those were some of the cost savings we were doing way back when, 20 years ago. And they're like, oh, we can save us money. And what would happen is that management would have us do a whole cost analysis. My boss went through a lot of these of justifying, and the outsource company would go, oh, yeah, we can't really save you money. Sweet. Kept our jobs. We learned a lot. We had a great time. It's tough. It was never easy, but I learned a lot. It was a great experience. I'm glad I did it. And I worked on then. Try and reduce that needless craft work. Get it to the point where you can hand off repeatable processes. Ghosting's one. Ghosting machine, adding a few and following some steps to do customization, you can bring that skill level down. I don't need to have this super top of the line guy to do that, or gal. So be reliable. Be reliably good. Right? Sure, Ed Wood is a cult classic because he was so bad. But he died of alcoholism, and he was making like cheap porn flicks at the end of his career just to try and make some money. Yeah, that reliably bad didn't do him well. It's kind of being well talked about after you're dead is not worth much, in my opinion. That's a terrible note to leave on. Thanks for watching. Thank you much. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel. There's the link. I post it sometimes on these other channels. You can follow me on Facebook. I friend people that I know, but you can follow me, so you still get the notifications. You'll be able to watch this. There may be some content, yeah, I'm excluding you from on purpose, but I'm focusing this on technology, so maybe you don't see all my cartoons I post or cat pictures or whatever, or you do, whatever. You can follow me on Twitter. I also mention this stuff on Twitter. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm more open on LinkedIn, and just behave yourself, right? And then suggest topics, give me feedback, right? Here's this feedback loop. You want quality out of this interaction, you have the ability to provide some feedback. I listen to feedback, I answer feedback. I'll do my best. I know I have not bought the new microphone. Yeah. So again, thank you much. We definitely run long on this one. I have a lot to say on this one. Clearly, I don't write a script. I do riff a lot. That's why I ended up running a bit long on this one. But I appreciate your patience, and you all have a good night.